This is Horton Cemetery in Ewell West, Epsom, Surrey. Today I'm meeting Steve Johnson, one of the active members of the Friends of the Horton Cemetery, and he will take me to the place so that I can film its current state. All these images are taken from the web of the Friends of the Cemetery, and they show how the cemetery looked like in its better days. The main purpose of this visit is to locate the grave of Felix Fernández García, a flamenco dancer that collaborated with the Ballet Russe and Diaghilev, as well as Massin, and there is a dark story behind what happened to him. Dr. Gabriela Estrada has been investigating about the whereabouts of this young man, aged 20, that arrived to London without speaking a word of English and ended up in a mental asylum where he died. Go ahead, please.
So we have two recognised Commonwealth war grave burials in the cemetery, one from World War I, one from World War II. Nobody knows why there are only two official burials here. There are many other ex-military people here, Polish soldiers from all over that fought in the wars, but only two recognised by the Commonwealth war graves. So this is the memorial that we have erected for all the patients who are buried within the cemetery. They come from the Epsom cluster of asylums, so there's 5 different asylums, and there's almost 9,000 burials in it. 9,000 burials in this piece of ground. So, this memorial was erected to commemorate all the burials within the cemetery, and it was erected by a former mayor, Councillor Alan Carlson, who is a member of the trustees on our charity to try and restore the cemetery. Before it was all overgrown, and the landowner wouldn't allow us to. So we had to put it here next to the road because it's not on his land. So this is the original entrance to the cemetery, just some iron fencing which is all knocked over, smashed, it's all broken and very overgrown. You'd never know there was a cemetery here at all. So somewhere in here, which is the front of the cemetery, there was originally a tabernacle, which is a tin building where they would hold the bodies just before burial. There's nothing there at all whatsoever now. It's more of a dumping ground. So. Bluebells, you see, bluebells grow on death. So if you see behind this tree, that is the only thing that would tell you this is a cemetery. Next to a main road, behind a bush, a sign on the fence. So from the entrance, there was originally one path that ran up the side there, and the burials were on either side of the path. As it went on, there were 2 paths, so somewhere here we would be on the second path going that way.
I see.
Because it's private land, we're very limited.
Yeah, of course.
Because people, I mean, technically it's trespassing, but it's just a woodland.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing to do is to recover the land.
Yes. Once we recovered the land, then we can get proper, maybe archaeologists in to do a proper research.
Yeah, I'm sure that they could find the grave very, very quickly.
As you can see, these are foxholes. There's bigger examples further up.
What's that animal to go in?
Yeah, foxes and badgers. And this is a very rotten tree.
Yeah.
See, it's just falling to pieces.
Yeah.
Don't know if you can get. Oh, you get a better view over here, maybe. So along the sides of the cemetery, on that side, we had these tall trees, which marked the boundary.
Okay.
And there was also a row of those trees down the centre of the first part of the cemetery.
Okay. Do you know the name of these trees?
I don't. And so you can see a couple remain down the centre, and those give us good markers as to where the graves and the paths may have been.
Yeah. It's a complete state of abandonment. Huh?
Yeah.
This is probably where Felix was buried, in the section C, which was towards the fences, really.
Yeah, because if we could find a gravedigger who's probably in an old people's home or something, if they're still alive, then they would be able to tell us exactly how the plots were set out. So if the landowner did want to move the bodies, they would have to seek permission from the Commonwealth War Graves for the 2 official burials here. However, not knowing where anybody is buried, they don't know which body belongs to those soldiers, which would mean they would have to excavate every single body and treat it with the same respect, which would cost millions of pounds.
Of course.
So when the asylums closed down and they were being cleared out for redevelopment, there's a story where people on our charity, they saw what was happening, and the people clearing out the asylum were just burning all the records to get rid of them. And so we had someone from the Epsom and Ewell History Centre go down in a van and collect up as much documentation as they could to try and save it for history. But many, many records got burnt and destroyed in that period of time. So we've just found marker 1496, and Felix is about 200 more than that. So with a couple of burials per plot, where we were over there was probably exactly the right area for where he would have been buried.
So near the metal gate.
716.
Yep. Felix's number is 1624.
So Felix's workhouse record shows that he was put into the workhouse on the orders of someone called Dr. Sandyland, who was a Victorian workhouse doctor that his job was to assess people and see where they needed to be. And history shows that he was supposedly a fair doctor, and it was his opinion that Felix was suffering from schizophrenia, so needed to go to the asylum. There's no record that we found to date of Felix ever being arrested, and if he had been put into the workhouse by the police, it would have been recorded that he was put there by the police instead of the doctors.
Can you please tell me who you are and what are you doing with the cemetery?
Okay, yeah. Hello, I'm Graham Jones. I'm a presenter on channel KT4, which is a local news magazine program. And every week I'm researching new information for the program, trying to support local charities in particular. So I've been dealing with age concern and various things, but also, of course, here we have this cluster of 5 asylums. And that particular cluster is the largest grouping of asylums in the whole of Europe.
Wow.
Right? And of course, when you have asylums, sadly, people pass away and they have to be buried. And where these asylums people were buried is here at Horton Cemetery. So it's a part of the story of the cluster of asylums within Epsom and Ewell. And on Tuesday, of next week, I'll be covering the story on my program on Channel KT4, which you can catch on Facebook or on YouTube.
Well, definitely have a
Thank
look.
you.
Yes. And just one question. I mean, Steve was saying that there must be thousands and thousands of people buried here because the average was 5 deaths per day. So that, along 50 years, we're talking about an enormous amount of people.
Yes, and it's a huge site. I know you've had a look at it, but to walk around the site, I don't know exactly how large it is, but it is a very, very big site. So yes, I mean there must be thousands upon thousands of people, and sadly, of course, all the markers, most of the markers have now gone, and there are some simple piece of metal with numbers, I believe. So I think it's a site of not only local interest, but I believe it's a site of national interest, which we should explore a lot more.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Lionel Blackman, and I'm a local solicitor, and I helped set up the charity last year to organise those of us in the community who are conscious of the neglect of the cemetery and wish to do something about it before it is frankly too late. The memories of those of us in the community fade or are lost, and so we are able to bring this issue to the notice of new people locally who aren't even aware that is a cemetery on their doorstep. Nationally, people who are not aware that it's the largest silent cemetery not only in the United Kingdom but in Europe, with 8,650 or so people buried there and completely forgotten. And we think that we have developed our charity really at the right time, as society is becoming more and more understanding and tolerant of those who suffer from mental illness. So for me personally, our objects of acquiring the cemetery and for the community is highly symbolic. If we can demonstrate respect for those who have died at a time of suffering of mental illness, it improves everybody's attitude towards those suffering from mental illness now.
Absolutely. And also, I think that you stand a very good chance to get a grant from the European Union. I mean, I know that England is no longer in the European Union, but nonetheless, this is something that affects, really, as you said, other countries as well.
Yes, there are a variety of different funding sources, and when there is a good prospect of us acquiring a cemetery, we're working on that now, then the National Heritage Lottery Fund is probably the most suitable source of funding for our project, which includes not merely acquiring that 5-acre cemetery and restoring it as a place that will contain a garden of peace and more, but also in recognition of the evolved biodiversity of the site, we will ensure that areas are also kept for natural habitat too. So we do need to combine biodiversity as well as an appropriate and respectful restoration of some areas of the cemetery. So we would hope the National Heritage Lottery Fund would support that aspect of the project, but we mustn't overlook the important work that we're doing in researching the lives of the people that were buried there, because there are many social lessons to learn even today, where we find some of the common denominators in the lives of the people that were buried there. There are some exceptional people as well, but treating all of equal importance, even those, and the majority, yes, who came from very poor backgrounds in London, as these hospitals serve the London population. And we're working on it, showing how so many of them did come from those very deprived neighbourhoods in the East End and South areas of London, and that will be valuable even to today to recognising connections between poverty and mental illness.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
This property belongs to Michael Hayes, and he is the owner of the cemetery. Apparently, they have been trying to contact him endless amounts of time, and he refuses to give them an appointment. He says that the land is his and he wouldn't sell it for anything. In the webpage of the Friends of Horton Cemetery, there is a quote from William Gladstone saying, "Show me the manner in which a nation cares for its dead, and I will measure with mathematical exactness the tender mercies of its people, their respect for the laws of the land, and their loyalty to high ideals."